Andy, Niall, you're very welcome. Welcome back to Limerick, I suppose, Andy, as well. Good to be back.
Yeah, good to be back. Yeah, I think I was down here last week, so it's not too long away. But yeah, it's always good to come home.
Do you get back much these days?
About once a month or so, for a few days, a couple of days here and there. My family is still here, so I'd be down a lot to see them and employ my mum as babysitter. But no, it's good to come home, yeah.
And when you were launching a book and bringing one out, this was the obvious place to
the only place really. I know we had a sign-in on Saturday in Dublin, and it was a great turnout there. And thank everyone who came along. But no, this is the real launch, and it's great to see everyone here. A lot of familiar faces, and thanks all for coming.
Yeah. You mentioned familiar faces there. Anyone in particular you brought down with you this evening?
No, I was just we travelled down with me and Maud and the baby, and my mother's here, my niece. And I see all the St. Francis members, Finbar there, and Jimmy and my old club mates.
There are a few Francis tracksuits around
see
the place,
around,
dotted
point
around.
them out, yeah. But my father-in-law, Daniel, came down from Dublin, so yeah, lovely to see. And one special guest, Annalise Murphy, Olympic silver medalist. Thank you very much for coming. Great to have you here. Yeah.
And I saw none from the boxing world as well. I see Eric Donovan there
down
at the back.
Eric, yeah, there he is. How could I miss him?
Good friend of yours as well, isn't he?
Yeah, good friend for a lot since we first met. Well, he used to slag me, so I didn't like him at the start. But we kind of got...
You didn't go to town on the book anyway?
No,
Did he get a mention even in the book?
I think he did. Yeah.
Thought it was a bit much, Niall, did you?
Yeah, we took those bits out.
But what I found very interesting, Limerick is a place for you. You've been away from Limerick for probably most of your life at this stage, but it is very much home.
Yeah.
No matter how long you're away, whether you're in Detroit, whether you're in London, it's still very much home. And it's a book really of three acts, I think. And I found when I was scrolling through it, being from Limerick as well, I was only a few pages in, and you turn to this page and all of a sudden in huge bold letters, Limerick.
Yeah.
And there it is. And it just catches you and you go, yeah, you know what? That's a Limerick man as well, you know?
Maybe that was a personal reaction for you. A lot of people from Offaly would feel the same. No, it was obviously Limerick's been a huge part of my life. It is home. No matter where I've lived in so many different places, and even now I live in Dublin, but I still call Limerick my home. It's home is a feeling, isn't it? It's where you feel at home, and Limerick will always be that for me, I think.
Did you notice that, Niall, talking to Andy, just what I mean?
Immediately. It was one of the first things that struck me. It was just how nearly everything could be traced back to Limerick. And no matter how far Andy went from Limerick and all the different places he's been in his life and all the different places that temporarily became his base, there was never anywhere else that was home. This was always it, and a very proud Limerick man, no doubt.
Tell me about the cover of the book, Fighter, Andy. It's actually, it really jumps out at you as a cover, just that black and white photo, you walking away, an opponent. I think I've actually figured out which one it is.
Yeah,
even though I think the face is kind of a little bit changed on the fighter. Yeah. I think I read you wanted to kind of maybe protect his honour a little bit, was it?
It was Conor from Conor Nagel from Gill Books, who was really adamant about the cover. You know, I wanted a nice vanity shot of me posing and not looking beat up. But no, he was adamant that this was going to be a great cover. And the only issue we had was this was a certain fight I had, and it was a close fight, and it could have went either way. It could easily have been me on the floor and him standing out, you know. So I made sure that his face was blurred and unrecognisable. The shorts were changed, the gloves were changed, and the corner post was changed. So maybe people will be able to figure it out, but for most people it'll be... And it almost looks better like that, because it's not... It's kind of like, could be anybody, you know, in that kind of way.
It's a real striking image, and the black and white as well. When I first saw it, immediately, I don't know for other people, what immediately came into my head was the first scene in Raging Bull.
Oh, yeah.
The black and white where he's, shadow boxing in the ring, all on his own. And it just really, really jumped out, I think.
Yeah, well, it's a great shot. And and it still set it up. I think it's like it sets it apart when you see a lot of biographies, just a studio photo of someone looking kind of serious. And I know I'm looking serious there, but the action shot is always better, isn't it?
Do you know what's going through your mind at this moment?
Yeah, well, it tells us, let's just thank God. Yeah, thank God, it's over. It's a relief. But it tells the story itself on the cover, because you can see it's been a tough battle, and it's taken its toll on me as much as it has on him, you know. So, and it sums up the title as well, Fighter. You know, that's what it is. So.
And one thing I think that want to pick your brains about the quote here just on the inside from Napoleon: "Death is nothing, but to live defeated and without glory is to die every day." Where did that crop up? Where did you?
I can remember reading it somewhere. Someone was saying that, you know, that Napoleon was a great man because he gave people a glorious death. You know, that it's tough to toil all your life in a factory or wherever it may be and not really have that kind of glorious moments. And that's kind of relatable to boxing. And like, it was a tough and long career, and there were so many moments when it looked like it wouldn't happen for me. That, you know, might just fizzle out, or, you know, especially after defeats, that I might just retire then. But I kept on going, and I realized that it was a tough life. And sometimes I would be envious of people who had a 9-to-5 job, who would have a structure in their life and could go out at the weekends, and, you know, knew like when they were getting paid, the next payday was, and could have a social life. Sometimes you'd be envious and would miss those times, that's why that quote kind of stuck in my mind. And then I said that to Niall at one stage, and he kind of dug up that quote to kind of surmise it, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's the perfect scene setter. It encapsulates everything about, as Andy has just said, everything about the journey, which was never ever a straightforward journey, but at the heart of it was that determination that no matter how many setbacks there were along the way, that the goal was always worth pursuing, even if it meant running the risk of failure. And I think once Andy had said that to me, it stuck in my head, and was just a really powerful opening image, and I think kind of helps to set the stall out for when you see the front cover, and then the next thing you see is that quote. I think it really helps to set the stall out for kind of the kind of thing we were trying to achieve.
And another one then that you go on to mention is a favourite quote of yours throughout your career. You have it up on the wall at the National Stadium. Matters of small concern should be treated seriously. Matters of great concern should be treated lightly. Where's that you came across yourself?
Well, it's been chopped and changed a few ways, and I've said it so many different ways. But what it really means is that, for me, I kind of interpret it as things of great little importance in terms of hydration, sleep, making sure you do the right type of training, all the small things, even down to having the right socks when you go to box, and make sure they are all taken care of. And the big things, like the fight or like this tonight, just take it lightly, because for me, when I used to kind of internalize those things, and I would always put too much pressure on myself and make the event bigger than it actually was, whether it be a fight or whatever. Always is a fight. I would always relate it to a fight. When you become quite insular, it kind of becomes too much, too much pressure, and you'll find yourself underperforming. So, I would be obsessive about the small details, but then when it came to fight night, I would be quite happy and light, and keep the mood quite light in the dressing room, and then try to perform my best. I saw that quote came from a film called Ghost Dog. It's an obscure Jim Jarmusch film. I saw it when I was about 12 or 11, maybe even a bit later, and it just stuck with me, yeah. So I recommend it to anyone, yeah.
So with the book itself, how did the book come about between the two of you? Who made the first is it something that you'd been thinking about doing for a while, maybe? Or
Conor Nagel from Gill was not persistent, but periodically he would send me that message. Have you thought about it? Have you thought about it? Any more thoughts about it? And it was never the right time. And then with my retirement this year, I thought, there is a good story to be told, and I thought, this will be the right time to do it. And especially with having the baby girl Julia, it's kind of a legacy for her that someday she can be able to read it and see what her dad's life was like, and it's kind of a testament. So that was one of the main reasons I did it. Yeah,
and even that's a nice thing to have as well, because it's not just looking back on YouTube or whatever it's going to be in 20 years' time, rather than YouTube maybe, but rather than just seeing the fights, but to learn about who you were when you were 18, 19, when you were growing up in Limerick, when you were moving to Detroit all on your own, like to learn about the journey that you took.
That's exactly why we did it, yeah. Well, one of the main reasons I did it, yeah.
And did you come into this from the start? Had you planned to be in on this, or had Andy approached you about it maybe?
No, I had never. I had always hoped that maybe an opportunity to work with Andy might arise, but I never really thought that opportunity would come in my path. And it was only then when Andy agreed that this was something that he really wanted to do, that Gill got in contact with me, and they wanted to know if I'd be if I'd be interested. And I met Andy. I'd met Andy a few times before. To my shame, I only ever saw Andy fight once in the flesh up in Belfast, and he fought against Anthony Fitzgerald. But as soon as the opportunity, as soon as that conversation came, and I think from the first moment the two of us got in a room together to start discussing this and what it could be, what I could bring to the table and what Andy wanted to be, and kind of immediately it was clear that there was kind of a shared vision there for maybe what we could do with this as a project and what we wanted to do with it. And as soon as I had that conversation with Andy, I knew that he was somebody that I wanted to work with. I already knew enough about Andy, his life, his story, to know that there was a great book there. But once then I knew from talking to him that that buy-in was there and that this was something that he was really passionate about. It wasn't something that he was just doing for the sake of doing. It was something that he really wanted to do to the best of his ability, like very much in line with my own vision for it. Then, I was delighted to get the opportunity.
And I imagine for both of you, it's quite a nerve-wracking process, especially at the start, because Niall, you're going to have to be explaining to Andy, look, I haven't really met you too many times before, but I want you to dig into your soul, dig out all the things, maybe things you might never have even told anyone before, and tell this to me. Like,
well, now it's in the book
practically
as well.
a stranger. Now you're telling everyone
everybody
else.
knows.
And Andy, as well, you have to go in and actually dig those up and put those down on paper. Yeah. And, no, you have to ask him. You have to really get into his mind.
And I think that's where these projects, I'd say, so often fly or fall, is that I was very lucky that between myself and Andy, we were able to build that relationship. And I mean, when you sit down on day one, like, as you said, Andy doesn't know me. Yeah. And no matter how much Andy wants to trust me on day one, there can only be so much. It's only as you work through that relationship, and we spent a lot of time together. I say Andy was sick of me every time. every time the phone went, I'd say nearly it was me looking for something or other. But we spent a lot of time together. And it's through those hours and through meeting each other a couple of times a week for a couple of hours at a time and sitting down and Andy meeting my family and me meeting Andy's family. And through all of that, the questions then that you can't ask on day one become a natural part of conversation by a couple of weeks into the process. And I'd find Andy maybe volunteering things that maybe I would still have been a little bit reluctant to ask, and Andy would want to bring them to the table and say, we need to talk about this now. And I would have been maybe kind of say, I might give it another week or two before we go there. And Andy would be, no, let's go, let's do it. And when you can build that relationship, and when I knew that I could ask Andy anything and he'd give me a straight answer, and he knew that he could tell me anything, and if at the end of the day that was going to be kept in confidence between the two of us, and if we decided for whatever reason that it wouldn't make it into the book, then
there's a lot of dark secrets.
It all made it into the book. I can tell you there was nothing that came out.
Was it tough though, Andy, to actually really open up at the start? How long did that process take?
As Niall said, I met him a few times, and we only got along. It was only for like quite short period, like quite short meetings, but. Like for me, the book had to be more than just a boxing book, and it had to be more than just a story from A to B, and make it quite, I guess, lyrical and a bit philosophical in a sense that
a lot of self-examination.
Yeah, and what it means to be a fighter and what you have to go through. I wanted that to be expressed in the book, and when from the first moment, Conor and Niall were on the same page, when we spoke about it and the ideas we had for it, we were all on, all on the same page, as I said. So it was easy, and I knew I wanted this book to be more than just a sports book, more than just a book that turns up at the, around this time of the year and then it's gone after Christmas in the bargain bin, and you never hear or think about it again. I want this book to kind of stand the test of time, that a box could read it in 20 years or a person can read it in 20 years and it will still ring true. So Niall did a great job. Like, Niall's done a fantastic job. I'd read his previous book, Philly McMahon's book, and that was more than just a Dublin GAA football book. It was it was about his life and about his brother, and it was a really interesting book. So I knew he was kind of the right man to bring something different out of me, and I liked the way he wrote. And we got on well. We spent a lot of time together, at least 3 times a week, 2 hours at a time. A lot of time, a lot more than that. And a few trips up and down around Ireland, meeting various people. But I think the result, it's a good book, and the results show in the book.
And Niall, Andy mentioned you were doing Philly McMahon's book last year, which was a resounding success. But was it a much different process working on this one? Do you have to just, refresh your mind, start from scratch again, rather than being in the mind, like, trying to write like someone else all over again?
Yeah, you do. It's a brand new slate in absolutely every respect of the project. I think somebody a while back asked me, like, what's the main difference between working with Andy and working with Philly? And, everything is different, but everything is different. But at the same time, everything is kind of the same as well. But you have to start, like, there's no two relationships can ever be the same. And that's what you have to focus on. And that's always, at the start of the project, it was all about me getting to know Andy, me getting to know how Andy thinks and how Andy talks and how Andy writes and how Andy expresses himself. And in order for it to be a success, the two of us need to be on the same page all of the time. That so much so that, I'm thinking as Andy, and Andy is nearly thinking as me, and the two of us just have that connection. And so, yeah, I mean, when you start out, you have to wipe the slate completely clean, because otherwise it can never be a success. And I think from day one we knew that we had hit the ground running, and we were able to get off on the right foot.
Is that the biggest challenge, actually, learning how to, when you sit down at the laptop, all of a sudden you're being Andy Lee, you're being a different person?
Well, I'm kind of fortunate. Well,
there were several.
Were you
drafts.
walking around the house going,
there was a lot of drafts? Well, change this word.
Yeah.
No, change that word.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate that Andy is very thoughtful and considered and has a real, like, everything that you read in that book is Andy. Like, it's all Andy. Like, and it all originates from him. And maybe I might have suggested, well, we'll frame it this way, or we'll put it this way, or we'll put this bit here or this bit here, but like it's all Andy. And so it made it a quite an easy process on my end, because all the raw material was there. Like, if I could play you the tapes of our sessions, some of it isn't that interesting, but some of it you could sit there and you could just play out straight.
How many hours of footage roughly would you say you have?
I wouldn't even, as Andy said, like, we're doing multiple sessions a week, multiple hours at a time for a couple of months, and that was just the kind of the initial build-up. Like, but if you were to sit down, like, some of those, like, it's actually I don't know if I ever said this to you, but it's like a privilege to sit there and just have that amount of time to spend talking with Andy, because everything that we spoke about it was very easy to get drawn into. We kind of got sucked into. I'd ask a question that I might think that, we'll only be talking about this for 2 or 3 minutes, and 25 minutes later we had gone down a complete rabbit hole of intricacies that then ultimately ended up forming a central part of a section or a central part of a book. And, when you're working with something like that, and when you're working with someone like that who thinks like that and expresses themselves like that, it makes it a very easy job. Very enjoyable one. Yeah.
And does it read like your words when you actually opened it up and looked through it?
Yeah. As I said, there was a good few drafts. We went back and just some minor changes just to make sure that was there, that words that I would use or phrases. But yeah, after I read it once and read when the first draft came through, read the second draft, and then I just trusted Niall, because I knew I could trust him to change anything that I wanted. So I never even read it. I haven't even read the final version, to be honest with you. And
it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I read it there over the weekend.
I'll read it in maybe 10 years or so. But it's very close to me, and so it's a really strange thing to have a book about your life. It's an honor to have it, and it is really great to have it, but it's a weird one, having your life story on page and that anyone can pick up and read it, But that's what I signed up for, I guess,
Just to reassure you, there were very few changes in the last draft.
And it has been really well received, though, in the last couple of weeks since it came out. Like, we had, you've had the nomination for the Board Gosh Sports Book of the Year as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, we've been, obviously, that's the great risk you take, and it's obviously much more of a risk for Andy than for me. For me, it's very little risk, but Andy is the one putting his life out there on a page, putting his story out there on a page, telling things that he might never have told or might never have told to a wider audience before, and really, brutal honesty at parts of that book. And I mean, I can understand for Andy how there might have been a little bit of apprehension, and the most rewarding thing for me is just to see that initial bit of engagement, that people have warmed to it. People really seem to be enjoying it. Hopefully we'll go and tell their friends how much they enjoyed it, and they'll also go and enjoy it. But there is that apprehension, but once, thankfully, people seem to understand what we've tried to do here and seem to be be really on board with.
Would you have been nervous, Andy, when the book was coming out, just initially how it was going to be received?
Yeah, I still am a little bit, I guess, but yeah, it's great to see like some of the reviews that people seem to enjoy it. But to me, it's like I don't want to sound big headed, but it's just I know it inside out, so it's very hard, and it's hard to tell if it's even good because I know it, like I can fill in the blanks.
Well, it's your story anyway,
and
so it's kind of. Essentially,
really,
it's not up for someone else to decide whether it's a good story or not.
Your life was terrible. But, I'm just waiting for that one to come up for me. But no, I'm really proud of the book, and I'm grateful and thankful to Niall and everyone at Gill Books who've done a fantastic job.
And, is there a legacy for the book? You mentioned earlier, like it's something for your daughter, Julia, to look at someday and read about what Daddy's life was like 20 or 30 years ago. Other than that, are there wider things, I saw you speaking recently about maybe, a message to send out to people in the gypsy community, but just how far you can go with life and how proud you are of where you come from. And
not just anybody who's from a tough background. Boxing, it's a sport that thrives in disadvantaged areas, but I guess sport in general. If you train hard and believe in yourself and you kind of follow your dream, it can work out for you. If you read the book, you'll see that there were so many points and times in my career that I could have packed it in and quit, and I would have been justified, and no one would have blamed me. People who knew the insides and the real story. But I just had to keep going. I knew that if I got a chance, I would win a world title. And I guess and for any boxers and sport people in general, they can see that, perseverance and to keep following your dream and hard work. That's what it takes.
And the layout of the book in itself, I'll get to a few maybe stories of it in a few minutes, but one thing I enjoyed was the layout where every now and again there was a chapter where it wasn't really about a moment in your life or a stage or a fight. It was just it was like a thought of the day. Like, maybe there was, in some cases there was one maybe like the fear of losing. The thought process in the few minutes before a fight. There was a small little chapter just about the mechanics of a right hook. And there was one right at the start as well that I found really interesting where you were saying when someone finds out you're a boxer, the first thing they ask is, or what they focus on is how many defeats you've had. It's the second number after your name. Yeah. That was a really interesting one. I hadn't really thought about it too much, and when I actually thought back, I realised myself I probably end up doing that, a lot.
Yeah, and you kind of carry it around with you, It's like, and the bigger the number in the second column comes, the losses. Kind of the more weighted it gets, and more the reaction gets. Yeah, when you're telling people, I'm 15-0, I'm undefeated, like But then when you say, I'm 15-2, but it doesn't. You just carry it around with you. That's the way it goes. But that's like in boxing, a loss. Manuel said that to me a long time ago. He said, a loss in boxing lasts forever. Because it'll be replayed and reviewed, and it's always going to be there, that kind of asterisk beside your name. And it's true for him, so don't lose.
There's one story in particular where it certainly wasn't about a loss. It was probably one of your most famous wins, that fight against Carl Daniels. There was one story in it I really loved. It was probably your coming out fight. It was that knockout of the year. It was all of a sudden people were talking to you as you were a blue chip middleweight prospect. And there was just a great story, maybe if you want to tell people here about it, about the weigh-in just beforehand. A very, very interesting weigh-in, and not the most common preparation for a big fight that you can imagine.
Well, it was we turned up in New York that weekend, St. Patrick's weekend. The fight was to be in the Madison Square Garden. All prepared. Emmanuel was with me because he was doing commentary on HBO. He'd already agreed to do it, so went over there with Sugar Hill, his assistant, Tony Dunlop from Belfast, and we went over there. All the family, of course, being St. Patrick's Day, everybody was there. Everyone had bought tickets, bought flights, and then the promoters, I probably shouldn't say this because I'll probably be liable, but they were doing everything they could to cancel the fight because the tickets had been sold. And I was kind of like not a rival, but a rival to John Duddy, who was the main event, whose promoter was promoting the fight, and they agreed to put me on the show, and then they kind of saw that I was getting a lot of attention, and they wanted to get me off it. They were doing everything they could to pull me off it. So we go to the weigh-in, And Carl Daniels comes in, I can't remember how many pounds over, but he was heavy. And I come in and I'm light. And they want to cancel the fight. The fight's off. And Carl Daniels was a proud fighter and wanted the fight. So Damien McCann, who's very influential in my career and life and is in the book, he had a chat with Carl Daniels and said, come on, let's get this weight off you. Went and got him a sauna suit, got him a skipping rope, and I had him jogging up down the stairs in the theatre of Madison Square Garden. And
this isn't even the strange part of the story.
I go across the road to what's it called, the TikTok diner. Anyone who's been in New York will know it. And milkshake, burger, fries, the best pre-weigh-in meal you can have. And we come back and there's only a few pounds in us after about an hour, and the fight's on.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history, yeah.
One of the most famous punches of your career, I'd say.
Yeah, it still pops up every now and then on like social media, and I'm like, oh. I still enjoy it.
Did you ever think about that? You wouldn't be superstitious. You wouldn't be going, you know what, big fight tomorrow, burger, fries.
Well, I had to get the weight on. I had to do what I had to do. I had to get the weight on somehow, you know. And that was the best way to do it. I had to I convinced myself that was the best way to do it. But no, that was. And it was a tough fight up to that point of knockout. Like, people only see the highlight reel, you know. And I was boxing well, but he was inching closer and closer to me with every passing round. And what I was doing, he was a southpaw, I was southpaw, so I was leaning outside and throwing a right hook to the body, and it was landing. But him being a wily old champion, he realised it, and after a while he was kind of blocking it and throwing his own hook, and he was catching me, countering me. And in one moment, I went down to throw my right hook. I realised what he was doing in an instant and pulled back and turned the hook to a hook to the chin. And like, if I close my eyes and think really hard, I can still feel that punch. I can still feel it landing, and the relief that I felt when it did. Yeah.
And you knew straight away as well, because you just turn, hand up in the air.
Some weird sixth sense I have that. You can see it in the Daniels fight and other fights that haven't been filmed or as high profile. When you land that punch, you know straight away, and you're walking away before it hit the ground. You know, and it's. It happened in the Carball fight, and he didn't hit the ground. And I was on my way to the neutral corner, and I had to turn around and make sure it was over.
Unload. Yeah. We'll get to that even a little bit later on. But a man you've mentioned in the last few minutes quite a bit, Emmanuel Stewart, just such an enormous influence on your life. Someone that took you into his home when you were pretty much just a kid, leaving Ireland after the Olympics. And what I found really interesting in the book is, what I wouldn't really have known is, there were times during your years over there where your relationship wasn't so great, where you went a long time without talking. And, you know, that's something I'd say the larger public never even really knew about.
No one knew outside of my family, really. And it's the boxing relationship between a boxing manager and coach, as Emmanuel was to me, it's always a complicated relationship, because you have the professional relation side of things, and then you also have the friendship. And me and Emmanuel were probably closer than anybody as outside of my family. That's how close we were. He was like family. As I said, as you said, I lived with him for all those years, and because I still had that fondness and love for him, I never let it be known that we had those fallouts. You know, I never let it be known, and he never did either. So we kind of kept it in house. Even though at times we weren't talking for long periods, but that's all part of the journey. Maybe I was a bit young and headstrong, you know, at the time, and easily frustrated and wanting things now, instead of next week or next month, you know. And but I don't regret any of those times, you know. And
because as you go on in the book, like, you know,
yeah, the way things played out.
By the time Emmanuel passed away, you were probably as close as you ever were. Yeah,
exactly, and it's a huge loss, and you know, could still be here today if things were different. But yeah, I was lucky that I got to spend those last few days with him. You know, the last few moments of his life with him, and those are invaluable memories, you know, to me. And that, it's a tough one, you know, because we were so close, but in a way, I got to be there for him when he needed me the most, and having done that, you kind of let him go in peace because you were there when he needed you, that kind of thing.
And there's some great stories about him, about just how much of a larger-than-life character is. There's one in particular that, like, I had a proper laugh out loud moment reading. It was, you were talking about, it was probably one of the most stressful periods of your life when this deal with Lou DiBella was coming up.
Yeah.
And you were going back and forth.
Yeah.
And Manny was telling you, this is the worst mistake you'll ever
Yeah.
make. Don't sign this deal. Don't do it. And you were toying one way and the other. You couldn't sleep at night. You couldn't concentrate in the ring. And you said eventually, okay, I'll do it. And you told Manny, you just said, okay, let's just get on with it.
Yeah.
And you were just
I was put in a situation where I had to, not that I had to sign a contract, you always have a choice, but for certain reasons I kind of had to do it, you know. And I'd been a long time waiting for an opportunity, and had I not signed that contract, the opportunity would have went. And we stressed over for a long time, me and Manuel and everybody else involved in my career, Damien and my lawyer Keith Sullivan, and then when I signed it, okay, let's just get on with it now. You went ahead and signed. But that was it. He kind of, if he didn't love me, I guess if he didn't love me as much, he would have said, look, Andy, we can't work together now. I can't work under these conditions. But he just said, look, we'll make it work, and that's it. That was it.
He was able to read you, and you were probably able to read him at that stage.
Yeah, sometimes he still surprises you, you know. But he was a marvelous man and a giant in the world of boxing. And he spent a lot of time in Limerick, and a lot of you would have met him, you know, and had time for everybody. Very, very generous with his time and with everything, with money. He helped out a lot of people in Detroit. He was probably, I don't know, supporting maybe 20 to 30 people, and all the kids in the gym as well. So he was a great man, and he's sorely missed.
And even at the start of your relationship, I mean, it says a lot about him that at the start when you told him, look, thanks for the offer, but I'm going to stick around here and be an amateur. And you said, okay, I'll keep an eye on you. I'll keep in touch, you know?
Yeah. We always kind of, from the moment we met, we kind of had the closeness or connection, and we always had that bond. And even when we had those periods when we weren't talking, we still had, reverence for each other, I guess. You know, that's why I never spoke about those bad times in public before.
Was it hard to bring those up?
Yeah, and we never, it's like that kind of awkward thing with a parent where you never really talk about those type of things. Like, you just kind of just don't even shake hands, just get on with it, you know what I mean? And just put it under us and sweep it under the carpet and got on with the task at hand, which was winning fights. And
there was one other small but valuable lesson I think I read you learned from your time in Detroit with the Kronk Gym, and that's if you're sparring with the world heavyweight champion, just keep an eye on how hard you're throwing punches.
Oh, yeah. Don't hit him too often, right before a big fight, yeah. With spar, but I learned a lot from Vladimir Klitschko in my time, he's probably one of the, not the only one, probably one of the main people who I looked up to when I was fighting, and saw how he conducted himself and how he trained. And even though heavyweight's notoriously lazy, but he trained as hard as anybody I've seen. And he was immaculate in his professionalism, and he was very competitive too. As I learned, I hit him with one or two jabs too many, and he hit me. I don't even know if it was a hard shot, but I got I got a what was it? Vertigo? That's what they call it. Yeah. Every time I laid down, the room would spin, and this was a week before a fight, so I kind of kept it to myself. Didn't tell anybody. And I won the fight anyway.
Slight knock to your pride.
Yeah.
The move to London, the third act of your career and of your life so far. It was just a great line. It's my debut, except this time it's different. It was like you were restarting your career all over again, moving over there, and It
was a hard move. It was a tough move, especially with the passing of Emmanuel, all the emotional weight of that, and then trying to work with a new coach, having been trained in one style, and for all my career as a professional, and then going to completely the opposite style. It was a big adjustment, huge adjustment, and it took a long time. It wasn't instant, and so it was but I needed a fresh start. I needed a change.
Were there times during that period where you thought, I might actually just pack this in?
Well, I had a promoter who was in America, and I was based in London, and there was very little contact between, so the opportunities I was getting was few and far between, and they were kind of like, the fights I was getting were never really planned in advance. The only one that was John Jackson, and that was when I had plenty of time to prepare. But up to that point, that was 2 years into it. It was fight here, we got to fight here and fight, and it was basically just fulfilling the contract obligations, and I was trying to get fights in between. But Adam recognized and appreciated my determination and the work I was doing in the gym, and he really strived. Once he saw that, after about 2 years, and the adjustments I was making as a fighter and how I was learning and developing, to push me in terms of getting me fights. And he worked miracles. Adam really did a fantastic job. First with the Jackson fight, getting me down to 11 stone, and organising the fight, and then with the Carball fight, he really, how can I say, pulled a lot of strings to get that fight, and it all, the rest is history. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't want to spoil the ending for people, but you do actually become world middleweight champion. I
think I was safe for everyone in the middle also. Yeah.
I hope I haven't ruined the book for anyone here now, but that fight against Matt Korobov, just that feeling of being the world champion, it's what you've been striving for since you were a kid. It's what you thought maybe at times you mightn't come to, and then the referee steps in. There it is.
Yeah, you're full of joy. You're excited, but immediately after that, the only way I can describe it is just a feeling of satisfaction and kind of contentment. And I think it's in the book, but we were in the dressing room and like people were saying, "Do you realize what, like Maud especially? What do you realize what you've done? Like you're world champion. You've done it, And I was just, to be honest, I was like, yeah, but I kind of.
You're just unsure how to react, let's say.
No, it just gives you that little, even though you won't be like, whoo, like you just be like lying in bed at night, just like, yeah. I did it. That's it. It's done. It's done. Yeah, and you get a little giggle. Yeah, you get a little happiness. Yeah.
Yeah. There's the passage I do love around the moment, David. I might just read out a few lines of it. Is from just after you've landed that right hook on Korobov, and as you say, you thought he was going to go down. He didn't, but you just have to dive in, and So I let the punches rain, left uppercut, right left to the head. I plot, I move, I stalk my way around him like a vulture. Right to the body, left right to the head. He keeps the gloves up, but I find a way through. Right uppercut, he stands there, surrenders his savage frenzy. Right left to the head. He's not moving, not even attempting to swing back. Just covering up, but he won't go down. Another uppercut, I ease off, left, right. I can see the referee on my shoulder, hovering, eyes locked on Korobov. Jump in and stop this now. And wave it off. I pause and then unload another barrage. Jump in now. Like it just sums up really just how frantic it was in those moments where you just see the legs wobble. And
like
at that moment was it just I just have to be all over this.
Yeah, I was throwing those punches and I was letting everything go, like all the power I had, and like had he survived that barrage, I was spent. The fight was over. Like he would have beaten me the next round.
How much longer, if the referee hasn't stepped in, could you have stood there throwing those punches?
I don't know, but I was just while I was doing it, I was saying, "Please jump in, just jump in now, ref, now." But
is there an eye going kind of over your shoulder?
Yeah, you're kind of in your peripheral. You kind of see him. And
why isn't he jumping in yet?
Why wasn't he jumping in? Because Makarov was 6-1 favorite, was winning the fight, and it was his home show, like it was his promoted show, and I was the away fighter, and they were going to try. Not that it was a conspiracy, but he was going to try and let him survive as long as he could. But I wasn't going to stop until the referee stopped it. Once I had that chance, I knew that was my chance. I knew I was losing the fight, that it was edging away from me, but I had to take the opportunity, and thankfully I did.
And there it is, yeah. And straight afterwards in the ring, one of the things you said is, I want to bring this home, I want to defend this belt in Limerick. Is that something now that you've made peace with down the years, that fight with Billy Joe Saunders didn't go ahead in Limerick, or is it something that maybe still plays on your mind? Every now and then, less now than it did obviously after the fight and for the year or two after the fight. Who knows what would have happened. The result probably would have been different, maybe it wouldn't have been. But I would have had the opportunity to fight here in Limerick, and it's probably like, you just have to with those fights, you just kind of have to just say, it was meant to be. You know what I mean? That I had my time, I was a champion for a little over a year, and that was just the way it was meant to play out. 2 cancellations, a long training, long arduous training camps, and if anything, I felt I was looking back, and even then I knew I was probably overtrained and done my best work in the gym, but I still fought hard. It was a close fight. It was a fight that was happening for the best part of the year. Billy Joe Saunders is a great fighter, and even at my best, it probably would have been a hard fight anyway. So you just to me, I just give it up to God and say that was the way it was meant to be, and I'm at peace with it now. I look at my life now. Not that I have everything in the world, but I'm happy with what I have, and that I had that year as a champion, and I'm at peace with it all. And you didn't get to defend the title here, but to be able to bring it back, you always see those great images of the day you arrived back in Shannon Airport with the belt, and like, what was that like? Just coming home, the reception you got.
Yeah, it was like a movie. It was like, it was mad, and it was brilliant. And again, thank you to everyone in Limerick who turned up and who organised it. The firehouses over the airplane, and my mum being there to greet me at the airport, and Maud being there, and it was a fantastic day, and I remember those memories, and it was fantastic.
And then the final act, the final fight, Keandre Leatherwood. At that stage, did you know this was probably the last fight?
No, I knew it could have been. But it was nice to sign off with a win, and especially in Madison Square Garden. So
there are a lot of fighters that don't sign off with wins, are there? Like,
yeah, and it was just nice way to finish my career and put a full stop on it, And he's a good fighter, Keandre, and might go on and win something in the end. But I boxed a safe fight and won pretty comfortably. And I stayed active for a while after that. That was in March and it was February the next year.
Yeah, it was February when you announced the retirement.
And there were fights I could have took, but nothing that would entice me to go back in there. Not when I had a daughter and something to take care of. My wife and daughter, and more to lose than to gain by going back in there. So I decided to retire, and I'm really happy now with that decision, and happy with my life and how things are.
Yeah, and it's always, I'd imagine, a huge relief and a success for a boxer to be able to retire on your own terms.
Yeah.
To be able to call it a day and say, you know what,
fortunate.
I've had my career, I've enjoyed it immensely, but this is the right time now.
Yeah, whether it be through injury or loss, or in boxing a lot of times contract disputes. And in sport in general, people don't get to retire on their terms, and I've been lucky to do that. And yeah, that's it also a satisfaction to me, I don't like that. I'll never go into another boxing ring again in a professional kind of way. I'm happy with how things are. Yeah.
What does the future hold then?
I don't know. Just a full-time dad these days,
What's that been like?
That's a big adjustment too, but it's great. It's even more rewarding than boxing, and it's my job now. Yeah.
And also as well, like, I'd imagine being able to be around full time I'd say it was a strange feeling at first, because with the amount of travelling between Detroit, between London, yourself and Maud, for I would say a lot of your relationship up to the last couple of years, you've lived apart.
Yeah, we always, from the start, we lived apart, but we always had our own ambitions, and we always, not that it was even spoken out loud, but that was the deal, that we would follow our dreams and not let our circumstances get in the way, and we stayed together through it all, and we're still together. There she is. Let's not turn into another late show here.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up because, I mean,
I'll keep it short.
For as fearsome as that right hook is, I mean, you came across like a right softie there on Friday night.
I laid it on thick. Yeah.
Do you remember though? Would Maud have come to a lot of your fights down the years?
Different times. Times she couldn't come to the fights, and the first fight she ever came to, I lost. So then it was a big So then that put like a bad omen on it, and it took a lot of convincing to get her to the fights. And then towards the end, she had to be at the fights, and was like a big part of my preparation in terms of being there. Not only that, kind of emotional support as well, knowing that she was there, kind of steadied the ship. So that's all in the book. It's a huge part of the book. As I said, it's all in there. It's not just. It's my whole life, so it's like how our relationship is a huge part of the story as well. And
you mentioned how you would have met, and I think you owe Billy Walsh a debt of gratitude for, you'd left Orson Uachtaráin at that stage without the number, but Billy got it for you.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's in the book too, so I'm not going to go into it. You can read it.
Have you invoiced him for the phone bills?
I don't want to embarrass her anymore. She was. I think she was squirming watching the TV on the Late Late Show, so I won't embarrass her anymore. But no, Billy always takes pride in telling me that he introduced me to my wife. There was a lot of other people who were kind of very important in us meeting, but Billy was probably the main guy.
Yeah, Billy did the hard work.
Yeah, all credit to Billy, not to me.
Niall, before we finish up, were there any stories that just stuck with you from your time with Andy working on the book, that, you know, any particular tales that stuck out, or any?
I mean, I loved all of it, but I particularly
Naturally.
but I particularly loved working with him on the section about his time in Detroit. You touched on it earlier, his relationship with Emmanuel, but some of the smaller stories, the stuff that is really, in the grand scheme of things, so inconsequential, but just speaks volumes to the relationship that they had, whether it was going down for ribs in Vicky's or heading out for a steak in Cameron's, or there is, of course.
Yeah, I really want to go to Cameron's.
I have looked it up. I have looked it up, but there's just so many tiny details that I think capture the essence of how close they were, and how, I guess it's easy sometimes probably to underestimate just how remarkable a thing this was for the best boxing trainer arguably in the history of the sport to pick up the phone, call this kid from Limerick, fly him out to Detroit, put him up in his house, and lived there together for 8 years as best friends, as, you know, as Andy said, is almost like a second father to him. I mean, and that's represented, I'd like to think that's represented in the details, all those tiny things about barbecues out in the backyard, and, you know, just everything about it, I think, hit to the heart of just how close the two of them were. Like, it was a special relationship.
And Andy, I'll leave the final word to you. How much have you enjoyed the process of doing it now, seeing it there in the flesh in front of you? What's that feeling just like?
Yeah, I'm proud of the book. You know, it was a lot of work, and it's quite exhausting. You know, digging into yourself and into your memory and trying to recall things, your feelings at those times. But the result, I think, speaks for itself, and I'm proud of the book, and I think it will stand the test of time. I hope you all enjoy it, and yeah, that's it.
And we're going to open the floor to questions now in just a moment, but until then, I suppose, just Niall, Andy, thanks a million for
thanks, Neil. Thanks very much.
Sitting here and talking to us and Off the Ball. Everybody, Niall Kelly and Andy Lee.
Hey, hope you enjoyed that latest offering from Off the Ball. If you want to subscribe, and you should, check out just up here. All our latest stuff is just down here. Generally, knock yourself out.